Hi and welcome. I'm Peggy Caruso, host of the Revolutionize podcast. I am the owner of Life Coaching and Beyond, an 8-time entrepreneur, executive and personal development coach, and author of 4 books. My new book has just been released. It's Take the First Shot, strategies to help you in less than a minute begin making positive changes. So on this podcast, of course, we always have really great guests. And today we have a very interesting guest. So I'm going to turn it over to her and let her introduce herself and just tell you a little bit of why she's here and what she does. Hi, Kari.
Hi, Peggy. Thanks so much for having me on. So my name is Kari Schwear, and I started my business called Gray Tonic about a year ago. And I work with professional women who are struggling to find balance in their life and looking for joy, that are also using alcohol or another type of numbing aid to kind of deal with that stress and that overwhelm and that unbalance that they have. And what I'm finding is that the alcohol is actually making their situation worse, but they don't actually see that. So they're looking to find ways to balance their life out, like I said, so they can explore what real joy can look like in their lives.
Well, what an interesting topic. We have a lot to talk about. So let's talk a little bit about the alcohol. As you know, you and I have talked on the phone about different things, and there are different levels of where alcohol takes people. Is there, in your opinion, any safe place that they can be with alcohol?
I do think that there is a safe place. It's not. There is, what I really speak about, Peggy, is what I refer to as the gray area. And the gray area of drinking is a place where someone starts to recognize, or not even recognize, that they're in this space, that they're drinking more than they intend to. So they're more than a social drinker, but they don't identify as an alcoholic, and they necessarily wouldn't be put into that quote unquote category. And that can be a very dangerous place. But for somebody who can have, a glass of champagne on New Year's Eve and maybe a couple glasses throughout the year, of course, there can be people that can tolerate and have alcohol on a very healthy level, for sure. But what I'm finding, and for a lot of women, is that it becomes very natural to reach for that glass of wine when they get home from work from their stressful day, instead of finding a healthier way to kind of deal with what's really going on in their life, which typically is something that's deep-rooted, that's a limiting belief, or there's, this is the way that they're processing their stress. So it can be a very confused, clouded area for one to be in. And that's why it's so important that my message gets out, that this gray area can be a place where it appears that everything is normal and fine, because most gray area drinkers are extremely high functioning, and they don't even realize that they might start to have a problem with their drinking and their habits. And they're thinking that they're somewhat normal and they're like their friends because everyone around them is also doing the same thing. So it becomes this very social, acceptable expectance almost for one to participate and drink.
If someone is in a gray area, is it dangerous to their health?
Oh, absolutely. It can be. It affects all areas. It affects not only their physical health, but particularly where they are with their mindset. It really plays a part on it clouds us. It brings more doubt into our mind. It can really play a negative factor in our overall health, not to mention the extra calories, the weight gain, the confusion. Alcohol in itself can really change our brain. It really does affect the way that we think, and it affects our neural pathways in our brain. So it is something that should be considered on a serious nature, and for someone to really pay attention to.
Very interesting. I know a lot of people who talk to me about that, where they think it's okay to go home every single day and have a few drinks, and they say that they're in control. Does it necessarily mean that they do have an underlying problem, or can it just be that that's just the norm for them, or what they've made it to be the norm, I should say?
Well, that's really a personal answer. According to the National Institute on Alcohol Abuse and Alcoholism, if somebody is drinking more than, I'm going to talk about women here for a moment. If a woman is drinking more than 7 drinks per week, then she is considered to be abusing alcohol. For a man, it's more than 14 per week. So let's break that down into what that looks like. Because, somebody's like, well, I don't drink every day, but a standard glass of wine is only 5 ounces. And if we get really, really clear and honest with ourselves, most wine drinkers aren't just pouring a 5-ounce glass of wine. They're pouring closer to an 8 or 9-ounce glass of wine. So going back to the 5 ounces, if you're having more than 35 ounces in a week, then you are considered to be abusing alcohol. And that can be where it starts to get a little clouded. So if somebody doesn't drink during the week at all and they're going out and they're having 3 or 4 drinks on the weekends, then that's putting them over into that quote unquote alcohol abuse category, which I would submit that's more of a mild alcohol abuse, which gray area drinkers do fall into. So it really comes down to a personal choice for that person and getting really clear and honest with themselves, the reason why they're actually reaching for that drink. And for me personally, I told myself that I was drinking because I really liked wine. I really did like wine. But what was happening is my love for that wine was becoming, the portion sizes were becoming the issue. And I think that can happen. It can happen very, very easily and slowly. So when somebody's like, well, I only have 1 glass per day, again, what size are you pouring? What size is that drink? And then also, are you really just having 1 or is it more like 2? And then is it really just 2 or is it more like 3? And these are the kinds of questions that people need to get honest with themselves.
I like that. Like I said, I deal with a lot of people and try to help them break their alcohol habit as you do. And so I find this subject very interesting. What pointers or what advice can you give the audience as how do you start to stop? What's the first thing you would suggest that they do?
The first thing I would have somebody do is really pay attention to what they're thinking and what they're feeling at the time that they are reaching for their substance of choice. And it's not always drinking, right? It could be anti-anxiety medication. It could be overeating. It could be scrolling through social media for hours at a time. It could be a number of things that somebody's using, some sort of numbing aid. So the first thing is to really start to pay attention to what you're thinking about and how you're feeling at the moment that you are choosing to do that, and pay attention to that. And if somebody is interested in starting to cut back on their consumption, keep in a diary or a journal of how many you're having, what the situation looks like when you are participating in drinking, if it's a social event, or if it's just because. And if it's just because, and if it's at home, this is definitely something where somebody wants to go, okay, am I drinking because I had a crappy day at work? Or am I drinking because I just really want to have a glass of wine with my delicious dinner and just have one and be done? Or is it because I need to rewind or unwind? So again, it's just getting really, really clear. And then if somebody is really wanting to put their best foot forward and try to make this alcohol-free existence for themselves, at least for the immediate time being, I always recommend to start with shorter periods at a time. Go a week or 2 and really jot down and journal what you're thinking, like I said, and what you're feeling and how many you're having. And if you are trying to cut back, really pay attention to what that looks like for you. And then if somebody can go maybe 30 days, maybe they shoot for another 30 days. And it's really just one day at a time. I mean, we're human, right? And so if somebody is struggling to cut back and they're having some difficulties with that, then it is something that they have to say, okay, what's really going on here? But a lot of times, Peggy, somebody who is a gray area drinker or borderline falling into the alcoholism category will stop successfully for a week or 2 weeks, even sometimes for 30 days, just to prove to themselves that they don't have a problem. And that can also be a false negative, right? So they can look at that and say, well, see, I was able to quit for such and such time, so I don't have an issue. But you can certainly stop anything for a short period of time. It goes back to the reasons why. And that's the key, why.
I think that's very interesting. A lot of things I do, as I stated, executive and personal development coaching. And no matter who comes to me, whether it is the top executive or it is somebody in personal development or his children, I make everybody journal. And you said that's extremely important. If you look at most successful people in the world, they journal. Journaling does many things. Like you said, it helps you identify what what's really going on inside of you. And it also helps you track your progress. And so I really encourage everyone to journal, whether they're doing it for the alcohol or anything. It really does help you see how long you're stuck in something. And then, like you said, I see a lot of people where they stop for 30 days but then they go right back to the way that they were. It's they're solidifying that, hey, I don't have a problem and now I'm going to celebrate. So, it's, if you can get to 30 days, I always tell them, keep going. Keep setting incremental goals. Like, we always call it, chunking it down, making it into manageable size pieces, because to just quit cold turkey is awful. It's hard. And I think that's a lot of the reasons that people fail. Like, you should see how busy I am in January with everybody's New Year's resolutions. And by February, they're back to where they were. So what would you recommend on how to have them keep going? Like, say they do quit something for 30 days. What is it that you tell them to keep going?
Well, it all comes down to mindset. Everything we do with behavioral change comes down to mindset. And when I briefly talked about whatever they're thinking about and they're feeling, that really creates an action. So whatever we're thinking about will promote or provoke some sort of feeling for us inside, or an emotion. And whatever that is can drive us to have an action. And paying attention again to what that looks like is really, really the important piece of all of this. Because then what happens if somebody's, triggered at work, and then they do have a drink, and then they're upset with their coworker, and then they have a drink, and then that drink ends up producing guilt and shame, and then that reinforces their belief system in the first place that, see, I need to drink and I need to do this to deal with all the stress I have in my life, and the circle continues. So again, journaling, paying attention, and really only looking at one day at a time. I have not had any alcohol for 3.5 years now, and I will tell you that my intention today is not to drink, and my intention tomorrow is not to drink. But past that, it's just too much for me. And I think for all of us as human beings, and we're doing the best that we can every single day, that if we can just look just a little bit in front of us, then that's a safer place for us to be able to deal with. It's easier for us on our brain level to say, you know what, I can do today. I can absolutely do today. And you know what, I think I can do tomorrow too. And then tomorrow I'll deal with tomorrow, and the next day after that. But then, it just continues. So it's not, it's all about the journey and not the final destination, because who knows what anything's going to happen in life. And I think that we need to provide ourselves with a lot of self-care and a lot of self-grace, and really be okay with where we are, and have this unapologetic feeling for ourselves that, we're human, and we are going to run into tough times, but our neural pathways have produced this go-to pattern for people that are choosing to use any sort of numbing aid, that when times get tough, that they fall back to using something or doing something, whether it's, staying in a toxic relationship. It could be any sort of coping mechanism that they're using. So unless we're able to change that pattern, it will continue. So it's really, again, I think it starts with mindset. And I really recommend working with somebody. We're both coaches. I think it's important to have somebody to talk to about what's really going on, because it's never the alcohol and it's never the coping mechanism. It's always, always about the mindset and what is truly going on inside of that person, whether it's childhood trauma or circumstances at their work, or they're just not fulfilled, or they're having marital issues, or their kids are driving them nuts. I mean, it goes on and on. So learning those healthy habits is really key.
I like that. And I've helped a lot of people that have gone so far that say they have cirrhosis of the liver. But if you stop, you can still live a very long time. Because a lot of people will come in and say, well, I just give up. Now I have cirrhosis. Now what am I going to do? But you can. I've walked side by side with people who, even if you have abused it to that level, you still can recover. And I like the incremental steps. I like what you're saying. And that's the same thing I teach. And for some people, it's really hard. I have the same philosophy that you do, that just let's deal with today and tomorrow. But when you're first starting, I even think it's okay. Like, let's say you have 4 drinks a day. Take a drink away a day. Mm-hmm. You'll see that as you just gradually get to, then when you get down to 1 drink a day, then say, okay, tomorrow and today, I'm not going to have any. And I think that it's easy for people if you do it incrementally. Do you agree with that?
I do. And, I do believe that there are people that can taper down and be successful in ultimately controlling their alcohol. I don't think that everybody falls into either you're not an alcoholic or you are. And I really think that society has dictated to us that is how it is. And I went to a 12-step program when I first quit drinking. And while that helped me tremendously, it didn't work for me moving forward in a long term. And so I think for each individual, they have many choices. They can attend a 12-step program. They can work with a coach. They can look at online courses and so forth and get involved with something. But the most important piece, if somebody is serious about controlling their alcohol consumption and they recognize that they possibly could have a problem, the most important piece of advice I can give somebody is don't do it alone. Accountability, having somebody to be with you, having the commonality with other people that are like-minded and that you can be supportive of one another is really, really the most important piece of this, because you got yourself into this by yourself and with some people maybe you were hanging around with or the people you're surrounding yourself with. So finding new people that are in the place that you want to be and getting that extra support around you is going to be really beneficial to your overall success.
Well said. I'm a huge proponent of having an accountability partner or measure. You're exactly right. You can't go it alone. And it's nice to have somebody walk beside you and pick you up when you fall down and not be hard on you. Because if you try to go it alone, I think you would agree that we're hard on ourselves. And a lot of people just say, I'm just going to give up. But if you have somebody there who has the ability, like you said, a coach or somebody who can give you techniques to help you through those rough patches, that's the key.
That's right. And one of the benefits with my clients that they receive is that I do provide them daily accountability. So every single day I'm in touch with my clients, whether it's a check-in or they're having an anxious moment or emergency trigger or something comes up, they have me in their back pocket. So I think it's important to, select somebody that's going to provide that support to you. And again, to have that accountability that's going to guide you through the mindset piece and really help you to discover this balance for yourself that will stop some of these behaviors that you're doing in these go-to patterns. Because ultimately, like I know I keep saying it, but that's really what's happening here. And so when we can get to the core of it, then we can start to make some great strides in their success.
Well, it is, getting close to wrap up time, but I'm sure I'm going to have people call me and say that they would love to bring you back because we could talk about the subject for a very long time. You're extremely knowledgeable, and I'm sure that there are many people out there listening to this that would love to get in touch with you to ask you some questions, possibly hire you. Can you tell them how to get a hold of you?
Absolutely. My website is graytonic.com, and it's GRAY. Tonic. And on there, I have some resources and blog posts. And then there's a scheduling link to schedule a discovery call with me, which is complimentary. And we'll see if we're a good fit. And that's the best way.
It has been a pleasure. Thank you so much for being on. And if somebody has difficulty getting a hold of you, they know that they can always go through me at lifecoachingandbeyond.com. All my information is there. So thank you for joining into the Revolutionize podcast, and we will see you next time.